Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just talked about the major blockbuster trade between the Knicks and the Nets, where the Nets sent Mikal Bridges over with the second-round pick to the Knicks in exchange for 5 first-round picks, 4 of which are unprotected from the Knicks. One of them is protected from the Bucks, and Bojan Bogdanovic, along with the second-round pick as well over there. So, a huge trade. The Knicks go all in. They build the Villanova 4, the Villanova core. It's going to be an interesting season. They're building their roster to stop the Celtics, is what that move says. And, I mean, if there's any team that's built to do it, right now it's the Knicks. The question is if they can stay healthy to get to that point later on in the season. But in this segment here, we're going to move into another trade by the Nets. They made another crazy trade that right after the Mikal Bridges one, kind of signaling they are going full rebuild mode. This time, just a bunch of draft pick swaps, right? They made a trade with the Rockets to get some of their draft picks back, give them some Suns draft picks, as well as some choices for switching draft picks in the future, which is a really interesting thing in the NBA that a lot of other sports don't offer as an option. So we'll talk about the implications of this, what the move kind of signals, not just for the Nets, for the Rockets, and for the rest of the NBA trade market and the free agency as we enter into it full steam. But before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw that in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the other side of this Nets trade. We just talked about the Mikal Bridges one, which was step 1 in the rebuild process here. But what really kind of threw the nail in the coffin for the Nets trying to compete, at least what signaled it for me, is this second trade here. The Nets swapped some draft picks, and that is saying it about as simply as you possibly can be saying it. Pulling it up here, they made a trade with the Rockets to get their own picks back, right? The Nets were in a position where they couldn't really tank because they didn't have any of their own draft picks. They didn't have any of their own ability. They didn't have any of their draft picks because they made some trades. They traded for James Harden. They traded for Kyrie Irving. They traded for Kevin Durant, right? They made all these trades to build that super team, and it ended up not working out for them. But it's one of those things where you have so many different moving pieces, right? You have on one corner the Nets getting their picks back, right? You have the Rockets getting some Suns picks with the theory that they would like to go get Kevin Durant, right? The full pick swap here, right? You have they get their 2026 first for the 2027 Suns first. The Rockets also get a right in the 2025 to swap a Rockets or Thunder trade for the 2025 Suns first round pick. So there's lots of different options. It's still flexible. Stuff is still moving around in this deal, but a lot of different firsts. But the main thing that the Nets get out of this is their own first round pick back in 2026. They are going to be able to control at least one pick, because the way that the draft picks move around the league nowadays, the way that draft picks get traded from team to team to team, the Suns and Rockets haven't made a trade, but now the Rockets have up to three of the Suns' first round picks, right? It's just they keep moving around which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you're playing hot potato with these picks. And it's nice to have your own picks. That's how you get the control in this situation, right? Now they have that control. They're able to tank. And I know that's like the boogeyman word in the NBA after the process with the 76ers. And, they're doing so much anti-tanking protocol all around the NBA nowadays. But being able to tank successfully and tank easily is a genuinely good strategy to build your team, right? You get that number one overall pick in most years, that's going to be an instant star, right? You can count on that guy to come in most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time you can count on that guy to come in and he can help turn your franchise into something if you get enough of those. Now you don't want to be in the basement forever, and it's not a situation that you love to be in, but it's a situation that is possible to get done as long as you have your own picks. And the Nets getting their own picks back here and trading their star in Mikal Bridges really signals a shift in their philosophy. Before this, they were trying to, build around Mikal Bridges. They were going to try and be competitive with a Mikal Bridges led team. A kind of similar situation to what they tried to do with D'Angelo Russell, where they made the playoffs that one time. Back in 2015, 2016, something right around there. They were trying to do something like that. And I think it's smart that they blew it up. Right. And we talked about it with the Bulls. We've talked about it with a lot of different teams here, actually, with the Blue Jays, I think the most recently. We'll talk about the Blue Jays tomorrow. I was going to talk about that before breaking news happened just about an hour ago, but you have to know when to blow up your team, right? There's a fine line there, right? Because it's easy for us to say, outsiders looking in, hey, we're not going to win a championship, blow it up, right? But you have to remember that unless everybody's on board with that, that's how you lose your job, right? If you have to set the expectations. You have to make sure everybody's on the same page. These are people's livelihoods, right? They come in and they blow it up. It's not an easy decision. It's not easy to rebuild a team. It's not something you can just snap your fingers and all of a sudden, boom, you have two all-pro level talents on your team. Like we talked about the Sixers with the process and how, it's sort of been a success, I guess, but they haven't made it out of the second round. They've become a top team in the East, but they haven't won a championship. And I don't know if you call the process a true success. Right, they really only got one guy out of it. They got Joel Embiid. They had Ben Simmons for a second there, but that never ended up. That ended up obviously poorly. Ben Simmons currently is probably going to be the tank commander for the Nets, right? He has been unable to stay healthy, and when he's healthy, he's been unable to get back to that all-star form that we saw him in the beginning of his career because he just lost his confidence, it's unfortunate, but I don't know. It's just something that you have to be able to get past there if you are Ben Simmons, but. Getting back to the Nets here, it's a really admirable thing that they did to admit that, hey, we're not going to win a championship with this team. We need to hit the reset button, and we need to hit it now, and we need to get everything we can out of it. And it's such a tough decision to make. But if you make that decision at the right time, which I think the Nets did a great job of choosing when to pull the trigger on this, if they make that decision at the right time, it can make that rebuild go 10 times faster. You don't want to be stuck in a situation like the Wizards where they refused to let go, right? They kept, some of it is injuries with the Wizards, right? And I'm a Wizards fan here, so it's not something that's great. It's great experience, but you had that John Wall, Bradley Beal team back in 2014, 2015, right? Where they were one game away from the Eastern Conference Finals, and then injuries happened, right? And despite the injuries, the Wizards were still trying to go on with Bradley Beal, and they finally blew it up, last season. And, they let Kristaps Porzingis go. They didn't get a lot in return for him. They got Chris Paul, flipped him for a good haul. They traded Bradley Beal for a good haul. They're starting to make that difference where you can see maybe the signs. And obviously, a lot of that is in good drafting, which they have historically not been very good at drafting, but it's all part of it, right? Knowing when to blow it up, it saves you from a long, long rebuild process. And I think the Nets front office did a great job of knowing when to blow it up, because it's not an easy decision to make. It's not an easy decision to say, hey, fans, I'm sorry, but we're going to be bad. And you just have to accept that. It's not a decision that always goes over well. In fact, it's a decision that most of the time doesn't go over well, and a lot of the time cost these guys jobs, right? Head coaches, GMs. Winning is their job, right? And if you can't do it, I mean, I'm sure they have a timetable. The owner were like, hey, you blow it up, you have X amount of years. We'll just say 5 years to turn this around, right? They've got a ticking clock now, and stress is the ball is in their court. They made that decision, and now they just need to go back it up. And a lot more teams can learn from this. The Bulls, for instance, should blow it up. They don't really have any pieces to blow it up anymore, but, they should have gotten more for Alex Caruso. They can try and trade Zach LaVine for something. Not that they're really going to get much with his contract and everything, all his injuries and stuff, but other teams can learn from this. And I applaud the Nets for making this tough decision, for making a decision that is going to be unpopular with their fans. But they needed to do this. They hit the hard reset button, and the Nets are going to be better for it 5 years down the line. So that's a good move. They got a haul, and they get some control in a tank with their picks back with the Rockets. But anyway, let me know what you think of the Nets making these moves. Was it the right time to make these moves? Should they have waited? Should they have given it another shot with Mikal Bridges and not having their draft picks? Or would you have done what the Nets did there? We are going to move and finish off our basketball talk for the day, heading down to South Beach, Miami, where Bam Adebayo gets an extension, 3 years, $166 million. To stay in Miami. We'll talk about what the implications are of that on him, the Miami Heat, and Jimmy Butler as we head further and further into what already is a crazy NBA offseason. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.